Captain Vextar looked at the blue and green planet spinning slowly on his view screen. He had been watching Earth for 3 months now, and he was not impressed. The planet looked beautiful from space, but he knew better. The reports from his science team told a different story. "Captain, the gravity readings are terrible," said his science officer, a thin creature with 6 arms. "Any of our people would be crushed flat in minutes down there." Vextar nodded. "What about the air? Too thick? Too much oxygen? It would burn our lungs? And the pressure would kill us before we could even try to breathe." The captain walked around his bridge, looking at more reports. The planet called Earth was a nightmare world. The temperatures went from freezing cold to burning hot. Massive storms covered whole continents. The oceans were so deep and violent that metal ships sank to the bottom. Earthquakes shook the ground. Mountains exploded with fire and poison gas. "Do they live down there?" asked his weapons officer. "They don't know any better," Vextar said. "Look at these creatures. They are primitive. They barely have space travel. Their weapons are simple. Their ships are slow and weak." The science officer brought up images of humans on the main screen. The creatures walked on 2 legs and had only 2 arms. They looked soft and weak. Their skin had no armor or scales. They had no claws or fangs worth mentioning. "They fight each other all the time," the science officer continued. "War after war after war. They destroy their own cities. They poison their own air and water. They're clearly not very smart." Vextar laughed. The sound was like metal scraping. "Against stone? Perfect. The Galactic Council will love this. Another easy world to add to our empire." He began writing his report to send back to the council headquarters. The message would take 6 months to reach them, but he was confident. In his words, species designation, human. Planet designation, Earth Sol system. Threat level, minimal. The local species shows limited technology and no space combat capability. Their world has made them weak and desperate. They spend most of their time fighting each other instead of working together. Recommends standard pacification protocols upon first contact. Expected resistance, none. Expected casualties, 0. What Captain Vextar did not know was that humans had been watching his ship for weeks, deep inside a mountain on Earth. Commander Jake Sullivan sat in a room filled with screens and blinking lights. He was a tall man with gray hair and scars. On his hands from years of military service, around him dozens of people worked at computers and communication devices. "Sir, the alien ship is still holding position near our moon," said Lieutenant Amy Foster. She was young, maybe 20 years old, with bright eyes that missed nothing. "They're scanning us again." "Let them look," Sullivan said. "What do our long-range sensors show?" Chief Engineer Lisa Rodriguez looked up from her workstation. She was a short woman with dark hair pulled back tight. Her hands were always dirty from working on machines. 3 more ships just jumped into the outer system, sir. Big ones. Much bigger than the scout ship." Navigation Officer Chris Parker turned in his chair. He was a thin man who always looked nervous, but his mind was sharp as a knife. "Sir, based on their movement patterns, I think they're preparing for something, maybe an invasion." Sullivan stood up and walked to the big screen that showed a view of space around Earth. Red dots marked the positions of alien ships. There were more every day. "How long until the Defiance is ready?" he asked. 2 more weeks, sir," Rodriguez said. "But, sir, it's just 1 ship. They have dozens out there now." Sullivan smiled, but it was not a happy smile. "Lisa, how many ships do we really have?" She looked confused for a moment, then understood. "Oh, right. Well, if we count all the hidden ones, ... "All of them," Sullivan said. Rodriguez's fingers moved quickly over her computer. Numbers appeared on the screen. Ships hidden in asteroid belts. Ships disguised as space stations. Ships buried under the ice of Jupiter's moons. Ships that looked like pieces of space junk floating in the dark. 237 combat-ready vessels, sir, plus all the defense platforms, missile bases, and surprise packages we've planted around the system. Chris Parker whistled. Softly, "The aliens have no idea," is the point, Sullivan said. "They've been watching us for months, but they only see what we want them to see. A few primitive ships. some basic space stations, and they think we're still using chemical rockets and nuclear weapons. Amy Foster pulled up another screen. Sir, we've intercepted some of their communications. They're calling Earth a death world. They think our planet is so dangerous that it made us weak. Weak? Sullivan laughed. They have no idea what this planet taught us. He thought about his own life. Born in a city that was hit by earthquakes. Served in wars in deserts so hot they could kill a man in ours. Fought in jungles where everything was trying to eat you or poison you. Survived storms that could flip over tanks. Every human alive had stories like that. They grew up on a world that was always trying to kill them. Hurricanes that destroyed whole cities, volcanoes that buried entire countries, ice ages that lasted thousands of years, asteroid impacts that blocked out the sun. But humans didn't die. They adapted. They learned. They got stronger. Sir Rodriguez said, Are we really going to fight them? I mean, they probably have technology we can't even imagine. Sullivan looked at her. Lisa, what's the first rule of engineering? If it's man-made, it can be man-broken, she said automatically. Right? And what's the first rule of war? Chris? Parker answered this time. The enemy gets a vote. Exactly, Sullivan said. They think they know what's going to happen. They think we'll surrender the moment they show up with their big ships and fancy weapons. They've done this before, probably hundreds of times. Show up, look scary, accept surrender, move on to the next planet. Amy Foster was reading more intercepted alien messages. Sir, they're talking about something called integration protocols. It sounds like they're planning to take over our government and make us part of their empire. Over my dead body, Sullivan said quietly. The room went silent. Everyone knew the commander meant exactly what he said. Sir Rodriguez said, What if we can't win? What if their technology really is too advanced? Sullivan walked over to a window that looked out over the hidden military base. In the distance, he could see mountains covered with snow. A storm was building on the horizon, with lightning flashing inside dark clouds. Lisa, you know what this planet taught us? What, sir? That there's no such thing as impossible odds. Just odds that haven't met humans yet. He turned back to his team. Every species in the galaxy probably evolved on nice, safe worlds. Warm weather, plenty of food, no major disasters. They learned to be civilized and peaceful and cooperative. And we didn't, Chris Parker said. No, we didn't. We learned to survive when everything around us was trying to kill us. We learned to fight when fighting was the only choice. We learned to win when losing meant extinction. Amy Foster looked up from her screens. Sir, the alien fleet is moving. They're coming toward Earth. Sullivan nodded. Signal all ships. Full stealth mode. Wait for my command. Sir Rodriguez said, What are we going to tell them when they contact us? Sullivan's smile was cold as winter. We're going to tell them the truth. This is our world. They're not welcome. If they want it, they'll have to take it from us. We looked at the screen showing the alien ships approaching Earth. They moved in perfect formation, confident and sure of their victory. They have no idea what's about to hit them, he said. Admiral Xenakala stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Eternal Victory. He was old, even by his species standards. Skin was pale blue and covered with the ritual scars that marked him as a veteran of 47 successful planetary conquests. Today would be number 8. Admiral, we are approaching the target world, his navigation officer reported. The creature's voice was soft and musical, like most of his kind. They had evolved on a world of gentle rains and endless summers. Excellent, Xenakala said. Begin standard first contact procedures. I want this finished before the midday meal. His fleet was impressive. 300 warships of various sizes, from small escort vessels to massive dreadnoughts that could crack a planet's crust. The formation was perfect, designed to inspire fear and immediate surrender. It had never failed. Admiral, we are receiving a transmission from the planet, the communications officer said. It appears to be from one of their primitive spacecraft. Xenakala S. Translator crackled to life. The voice that came through was harsh and strange, speaking in rough sounds that hurt his sensitive ears. This is Commander Jake Sullivan of the Earth space vessel Defiance. You have entered human territory without permission. State your intentions or withdraw immediately. The Admiral's crew looked at each other in surprise. No primitive species had ever made demands of a Galactic Council fleet. Most fell to their knees and begged for mercy. How amusing, Xenocala said. Put me through to them. The communication channel opened. Xenocala spoke in his most official voice, the one that had accepted the surrender of dozens of worlds. Primitive species of the third planet, I am Admiral Xenocala of the Galactic Council First Contact Division. Your world is now under the protection of our great civilization. Prepare for integration protocols. Do not resist, and your people will be treated fairly. There was a pause. Then the human voice came back, even harsher than before. Negative, Admiral. This is human space, and you are not welcome here. You have 30 seconds to begin withdrawal. Or we will consider your presence an act of war. Xenocala's crew gasped. Some of them had never heard anyone speak to an admiral that way. The communications officer's hand shook as he tried to adjust his equipment. Admiral, his tactical officer, whispered, "Perhaps they do not understand our power. Should we show them?" Xenocala nodded. Begin intimidation display. Full fleet power. Across the human solar system, 300 Galactic Council warships suddenly appeared. They'd been invisible until now, hidden by advanced technology that bent light around their hulls. How they revealed themselves in all their terrible glory. The ships were beautiful and deadly. Their hulls gleamed like polished metal. Energy weapons charged with deadly light. Shield generators hummed with power that could stop asteroids. It was a display of force that had brought entire star systems to their knees. Xenocala smiled as he watched his fleet take perfect battle formation. No primitive species could look at this sight and still think of resistance. Now they will see reason, he said. The human response came immediately. It's all human vessels. This is Commander Sullivan. Weapons free. Show them what Deathworlders can do. For a moment, nothing happened, and space around Earth exploded into activity. Ships appeared everywhere. Not the handful of primitive craft the Council had detected, but hundreds of vessels. Emerging from hiding places throughout the solar system. It came from behind asteroids, from the shadows of planets, from clouds of space debris that had hidden them perfectly. What in the void, ... Xenocala started to say. His tactical officer was staring at his screens in shock. Admiral, I count over 200 enemy vessels. They were completely hidden from our sensors. Impossible. Our technology is centuries ahead of theirs. Admiral, they're not using the same technology as the ships we observed. These are ... different. The main screen, the human flagship, came into view. The ESV Defiance was ugly compared to Council ships. It looked like it had been built for war and nothing else. No smooth curves or artistic beauty. Just armor, weapons, and the promise of violence. Admiral, they're targeting our ships, the tactical officer said, his voice rising in panic. Let them try, Xenocala said. Our shields can stop anything they have. The first human missiles reached the Council fleet 30 seconds later. They were not like anything in Council databases. Instead of explosive warheads, they carried chunks of dense metal accelerated to incredible speeds. When they hit Council shields, the energy barriers held for exactly 2 seconds before collapsing. Shield failure on the glorious dawn. Someone shouted, the peaceful trader is taking heavy damage. Multiple hull breaches on the swift current. Admiral Xenocala watched in horror as his perfect fleet began to break apart under the human attack. These were not primitive weapons. They were simple, brutal, and terrifyingly effective. How are they doing this? He demanded. His science officer looked up from his station, his face pale with fear. Admiral, they're using basic physics as a weapon. Mass times velocity equals destruction. Their missiles don't explode. They just hit us really, really hard. More reports flooded in. Human ships were everywhere, attacking from all directions. They moved differently than Council vessels. Harder and faster. Like they didn't care about taking damage as long as they could hurt the enemy. Contact multiple alien formations engaging our perimeter forces near Mars. Came a voice over the human communication channel. Neptune Station reports successful torpedo strikes on enemy capital ships. Another voice added. Admiral Zenekala realized with growing horror that the humans had been planning this. They had bases throughout their system. They had weapons hidden. Everywhere. They'd been watching and waiting and preparing for war. Admiral, the Serene Wanderer, is requesting permission to withdraw, his communications officer said. Denied, we do not retreat from primitives. But even as he said it, Zenekala could see his fleet was in trouble. Human ships swarmed around his larger vessels like angry insects. They were small and fast and seemed to appear from nowhere. One human ship, barely the size of a council escort vessel, attacked the dreadnought Infinite Peace head-on. Its weapons tore through the massive ship's armor like it was made of paper. The dreadnought's return fire missed completely as the human ship spun and twisted through space in ways that seemed impossible. Admiral, we're receiving a transmission. From the human commander again, the communications officer said. Zenekala nodded grimly. Perhaps now they were ready to surrender. This is Commander Sullivan. I'm going to give you one chance to leave our system peacefully. You have 10 minutes to start moving away from Earth. If you're still here after that, we'll show you what happens when you threaten our home. The arrogant Zenekala whispered. Do they not see our power? His tactical officer looked up from his screens. Admiral, we've lost 17 ships in the last 10 minutes. The humans have lost 3. That's impossible. Sir, I think they know exactly what they're doing. They're not fighting like primitives. They're fighting like ... like soldiers. Admiral Zenekala looked at the battle raging around him. His beautiful fleet was being torn apart by ugly human ships that moved like predators and hit like hammers. These were not the weak, frightened primitives he had expected. Sir, the human flagship is moving toward us, the navigation officer said, on the screen. The ESV Defiance grew larger. Its hull was scarred with the marks of battle, but it came on without slowing. Other human ships moved with it, forming a deadly formation that spoke of years of practice and preparation. They knew we were coming, Zenekala said quietly. Been ready for this fight all along. His crew stared at him, waiting for orders. But for the first time in his long career, Admiral Zenekala didn't know what to do. Everything he thought he knew about warfare was wrong. These humans fought like the universe itself was trying to kill them, which, he was beginning to understand, it probably had been. 3 months had passed since the first battle at Earth, and Supreme Commander Kelthus was starting to understand that his military had made a terrible mistake. He stood in the war room of the Galactic Council's greatest military base, staring at maps that showed nothing but red marks where human forces had won victories. Explain this to me again, he said to his intelligence chief, a nervous creature with too many eyes. How are primitives from a backwater world defeating our fleets? Strategic analyst Morden stepped forward. He had been studying human combat for weeks, and the reports he brought made no sense. Supreme Commander, I believe we have fundamentally misunderstood this species. They are primitives, Kelthus said firmly. Their technology is centuries behind ours. Yes, sir, but that may not matter. Morden activated a holographic display showing recent battle footage. Watch this engagement near the planet they call Jupiter. The display showed a council fleet of 50 ships facing 12 human vessels. The outcome should have been obvious. Instead, the humans had destroyed 37 council ships while losing only 2 of their own. How? Kelthus demanded. They fight differently than any species we have encountered, Morden explained. Look at this human captain, Alina Vasquez. Her ship took damage that should have killed everyone aboard. Her engines were destroyed. Her weapons were offline. But instead of surrendering, she used her ship's remaining power to ram one of our dreadnoughts. Suicide attacks are the mark of desperate primitives. But it wasn't suicide, sir. She and her crew survived. They had emergency systems we didn't know existed. And while we were dealing with the ramming attack, her other ships destroyed our entire formation. Kelthus looked at more reports. Every battle told the same story. Humans who refused to surrender even when facing impossible odds. Human ships that kept fighting with half their systems destroyed. Human crews that treated catastrophic damage as a minor inconvenience? Sir, said another officer, we have reports from the captured human vessel. The interrogation of their crew has been difficult. What do you mean difficult? They won't break, sir. We've used every psychological technique we know. They just stare at us and ask when we're going to let them get back to fighting. Morden pulled up another file. Supreme Commander, I've been studying their homeworld. I believe I understand why they behave this way. The display showed Earth, from space looking peaceful and blue. But then Morden began showing surface details. Massive storms that could destroy cities. Earthquakes that split the ground open. Volcanoes that buried entire regions under ash and fire. Their planet is trying to kill them, Morden said simply. Every day, every hour, something on that world is attempting to destroy all life. The weather, the ground, the very air they breathe. So they should be weak and terrified. No, sir. They should be strong and fearless. And they are. Kelthus watched footage of human soldiers boarding a council ship. They moved through corridors filled with poison gas that would kill most species in seconds. They fought in temperatures that would freeze council blood solid. When their weapons ran out of ammunition, they used pieces of broken metal as clubs. Sir, we captured one of their officers, another aide reported, Major Kevin Torres. We tried to interrogate him about their military capabilities, and he laughed at us, sir. He said that if we wanted to know how humans fight, we should ask the Ice Age, or the Black Death, or the asteroid that killed the dinosaurs. Kelthus didn't understand the references, but he understood the tone. These humans were not afraid of anything because they had already survived everything. What about their homeworld defenses? He asked. That's the worst part, sir, Morden said. Captain Elena Vasquez has turned their asteroid belt into a weapon, which is hidden missile launchers and railguns on chunks of rock that look like natural debris. Our ships can't tell the difference between a harmless asteroid and a military base until it starts shooting at them. More reports came in. Colonel Danny Murphy had successfully captured 12 council vessels using soldiers and powered armor that let them survive in the vacuum of space. His troops fought like they had been born. For war, moving with a precision that spoke of years of training. How many soldiers like him do they have? Kelthus asked. Sir, we believe every human is a soldier. Their entire civilization is built around conflict and survival. They have been fighting wars for their entire recorded history. Communication. Officer interrupted the meeting. Supreme Commander, we have an urgent message from Admiral Ithmera's fleet at the Kepler system. What now? Sir, the humans have brought the fight to our territory. A human strike force led by someone called Admiral Laura Mitchell has attacked Kepler Station. Kelthus felt his blood go cold. Kepler Station was deep in council space, defended by over 100 warships. It was supposed to be impossible to attack. How many ships did they bring? 37 human vessels, sir, against 100 of ours. Finally, some good news. But the communication officer's expression said otherwise. Sir, Admiral Ithmera is requesting immediate reinforcements. The humans have. They've done something we've never seen before. The main display showed the battle at Kepler Station. The human fleet had arrived and immediately began moving asteroids, using gravity and momentum to fling massive rocks at the council forces at incredible speeds. They're using the system itself as a weapon, Morden whispered. On the screen, Admiral, Laura Mitchell's flagship directed the assault with cold precision. She had calculated the orbital mechanics perfectly, turning chunks of ice and stone into planet-killing weapons. It's not possible to do this, the tactical officer said. The mathematical calculations alone would take our best computers days to work out. Then how are they doing it? Sir, I think they do this kind of math for fun. Their species has been studying physics and engineering for centuries, but not for peaceful purposes. They use science to build better weapons. Another report came in from a different front. Colonel Steve Harris had developed what council forces were calling ghost tactics. His teams would attack supply convoys, destroy communication relays, and vanish before reinforcements could arrive. Council forces were starting to see human attackers everywhere, even when none were present. They're making us afraid of shadows, one officer complained. No, Kelthus said quietly. They're making us afraid of them, and it's working.
Dr. Helen.
Carter, one of the captured human scientists, had been studied by council researchers. Her psychological profile made for disturbing reading. She showed no fear of death, no concern for impossible odds, and an almost cheerful acceptance of violence. As a natural part of existence, she treats war like we treat gardening, the research report concluded. A normal, everyday activity that requires some skill and planning, but nothing to get excited about. More disturbing were the reports about human culture. They told stories about heroes who died fighting impossible battles. They sang songs about last stands and glorious defeats. They seemed to think that dying well was more important than living safely. Sir Morden said, I have a theory about why they're so effective. Tell me. Most species in the galaxy evolved on worlds that were safe and stable. When we developed civilization, we focused on art, philosophy, and peaceful cooperation. War became a specialized activity that only a few individuals engaged in. And the humans? Sir, I believe that for humans, peace is the specialized activity. War is their natural state. They've been fighting for survival since their species began. Every human is born knowing how to fight, because the ones who couldn't. Fight died out millions of years ago. Kelthus looked at the reports scattered across his desk. Victories that should have been impossible. Tactics that defied military logic. Soldiers who fought like they were already dead and just hadn't bothered to lie down yet. Sir, what are your orders? His aide asked. Kelthus thought about Admiral Zenekala's first report, calling the humans primitive and weak. He thought about the Council's confidence that this would be a simple conquest. He thought about the 300 ships they had lost in the first engagement alone. Send a message to all fleet commanders, he said finally. Fighting primitives. We are fighting something else entirely. Something that was forged in fire and steel and endless war. What should we call them, sir? Kelthus looked at the image of Earth on his screen, that beautiful blue world that had created these terrifying warriors. Call them what they are, he said. 6 months after the first shots were fired at Earth, the war had spread across 3 star systems. What the Galactic Council had expected to be a simple police action had become their worst nightmare. Fleet Admiral Ithmera sat in the wreckage of what used to be Kepler Station, trying to understand how everything had gone so wrong. Admiral, the human fleet is moving again, his tactical officer reported. The young creature's voice shook with barely controlled fear. Admiral Mitchell's ships are heading for the Centauri system. Ithmera closed his eyes. Admiral Laura Mitchell had become a legend among human forces and a terror among Council troops. Her tactics were brutal, creative, and utterly effective. She had taken a fleet 1/3 the size of his defending force and destroyed Kepler Station in less than 6 hours. How did she do it? He asked his science officer for the 100th time. Sir, she used the system's gravity wells as weapons. She calculated the exact trajectory needed to accelerate asteroids to 10% of light speed when they hit our ships. The officer's voice trailed off. Ithmera remembered the impact. He'd watched the asteroid strike the dreadnought Eternal. Peace. The massive warship, built to withstand the firepower of entire fleets, had simply vanished in a flash of light and debris. Nothing remained except scattered atoms and the screams of 1,000 crew members cut short. It's not possible, he whispered. The mathematics alone should take years to calculate. Sir, we've intercepted some of their communications. The humans. Call it kinetic bombardment. They seem to think it's a basic military tactic. A communication came in from another part of the fleet. Admiral, we're receiving reports from the Ghost Runner incident. Ithmera felt his stomach turn. The Ghost Runner was a human stealth ship commanded by someone called Paul Zhang. It had somehow penetrated deep into Council space and attacked supply convoys. But that wasn't the worst part. Sir, the humans are broadcasting footage of the attack. What? Sending the battle recordings to every Council world, sir. They want everyone to see what they can do. The main screen lit up with images of the Ghost Runner attacking a Council supply convoy. The human ship moved like a shadow, appearing from nowhere to destroy 3 cargo vessels and 2 escort ships before vanishing again. But it was the human crew's behavior that chilled Ithmera's blood. They were laughing. The audio pickup caught the sound of human voices whooping and cheering as they tore apart council ships. They treated warfare like some kind of game, celebrating each successful kill like children playing with toys. "Sir, there's more," the communications officer continued. "Captain Nicole Hayes aboard the Retribution has released a statement." Hayes appeared on the screen. She was a human female, with short dark hair and cold eyes that seemed to look right through the camera. Her ship's bridge was scarred from battle, but she stood straight and confident. "To all Council forces," she began, her voice calm and steady. "You invaded our home. You threatened our families. You thought we would surrender because our technology isn't as advanced as yours. You were wrong." She gestured to something off-screen, and the camera panned to show Council prisoners being held on her ship. "They looked terrified and broken. These are your soldiers," Hayes continued. "They're alive because we chose to let them live. Remember that every human ship you face has made the same choice. We could have killed them all, but we didn't. Don't mistake our mercy for weakness." The transmission ended, but its message was clear. The humans weren't just winning battles. They were demonstrating that they could have been much more brutal if they chose to be. "Admiral," another officer said, "we're receiving reports from the Europa Station battle." If Mara had heard whispers about Europa Station, Council force had tried to attack one of Jupiter's moons, thinking it was lightly defended. They had been very wrong. Captain Tony Flores held the station with just 200 defenders against 3,000 of our troops, the intelligence officer reported. "When we finally broke through their defenses, do you know what his final transmission was? Tell me, you wanted to see what Deathworlders can do? We're just getting started." The officer continued reading the report. "Sir, when our forces reached the command center, they found that Flores had rigged the entire station to explode. He and his remaining crew stayed behind to manually detonate the charges. They killed 800 of our soldiers and destroyed 4 of our ships. Suicide attacks again. No, sir. They had escape pods ready. At the last second, they ejected and were picked up by a rescue ship. Flores survived and is back in command of another station." Mithmara stared at the report.
What?
The humans had turned a defeat into a victory by making it so costly that the Council forces couldn't afford to press their attack. More reports kept coming in. Colonel Steve Harris was conducting raids deep in Council territory, hitting targets that should have been impossible to reach. His teams moved like ghosts, appearing from nowhere to destroy military bases and supply depots before vanishing back. "Into space? How are they doing this?" Ithmera demanded.
Oh.
"Our intelligence says they don't have the technology for deep space stealth operations. Sir, we think they're not using stealth technology. They're using ... creativity." Harris's teams disguised their ships as space debris, asteroids, even dead whales floating in space. "Our sensors are designed to detect artificial objects, not biological ones. By the time we realize that the floating space whale is actually a human warship, it's already firing missiles at us." The absurdity of it made Ithmera's head hurt. The humans were using fake dead animals as camouflage for their warships. And it was working. A priority message came through from Council High Command. Supreme Commander Kelthus appeared on the screen, and he looked exhausted. "Admiral, what is your status, sir? We've lost 60% of our fleet. The humans are now attacking our supply lines in 5 different systems. I'm requesting immediate reinforcements." "There are no reinforcements," Kelthus said quietly. "Every fleet we send to fight them gets destroyed or badly damaged. The humans seem to know exactly where we're going and what we're planning." "How is that possible, Admiral?" "We think they've been intercepting our communications from the beginning. But that's not the worst part. Some of our member species are starting to question our leadership." Ithmera felt cold fear wash over him. The Galactic Council ruled through fear and the promise of protection. Member worlds started to doubt their power. ... "Sir, what are your orders? Try to hold your current positions. Don't engage the humans. Unless you have overwhelming superiority. And Admiral, start thinking about what terms we might be willing to accept for a ceasefire." The transmission ended, leaving Ithmara alone with his thoughts. A ceasefire. 6 months ago, they had been planning to conquer Earth in a single afternoon. Now they were considering surrender. A young ensign approached his command chair. "Admiral, we're receiving another human transmission. This one is addressed to you personally. Put it through." A human face appeared on the screen. It was scarred and weathered, with gray hair and eyes that had seen too much combat. The name tag on his uniform read Rodriguez. "Admiral Ithmera, this is General Marcus Rodriguez of the Terran Defense Force. I understand you're in command of what's left of the Kepler Sector fleet. What do you want, human? I want to give you some advice. You're fighting a war you can't win against an enemy you don't understand. We've been watching your tactics, studying your strategies. If you fight like you expect your enemies to be reasonable and civilized." Rodriguez leaned forward. "Admiral, we're not reasonable. We're not civilized. We're the children of a world that spent 4 billion years trying to kill us, and we're still here. Do you know what that makes us?" Ithmera said nothing. "Makes us the most dangerous species in the galaxy, and you just gave us a reason to prove it." The transmission ended, leaving the Council Admiral staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked quietly, trying to pretend they hadn't heard the human's words. But Ithmera had heard them, and he was beginning to understand that. The Galactic Council had made the worst mistake in their history. They had started a war with Deathworlders. 1 year after the first alien ship appeared near Earth's moon, Fleet Admiral Karen Wright sat in a conference room on Luna City. The room had large windows that looked out at the stars, and she could see the wreckage of alien warships still floating in space. It served as a reminder of how much had changed. Across the table from her sat Supreme Commander Kelthus. The alien leader looked older and more tired than in the propaganda videos Earth had intercepted during the war. His once proud uniform was simple now, without the decorations that had marked his authority over dozens of worlds. "Admiral Wright," Kelthus said through his translator, "I must admit that your species has ... surprised us." Karen Wright smiled, but it wasn't a cruel smile. She was tired too. The war had cost both sides more than anyone had expected. We're full of surprises. That's what happens when you grow up on a world that's constantly trying to kill you. Around the table sat representatives from 12 different species. Some had been part of the Galactic Council. Others had broken away during the war, choosing to side with humanity when they saw how the conflict was going. The Treaty of Luna was being signed today, but it wasn't the kind of treaty the Council had ever signed before.
Oh.
The terms are unusual, said Representative Zarthik of the Hegemony Worlds. His species looked like tall, thin birds with scales. Instead of feathers, the Galactic Council has never agreed to recognize a primitive species as equals. "We're not primitive anymore," said Admiral Wright quietly, "if we ever were." Dr. Ashley Brown, Earth's new Director of Xenological Studies, looked up from her notes. She was a small woman with thick glasses and quick hands that were always moving. "Actually, I think the word primitive was the problem from the beginning. You assumed that advanced technology meant advanced civilization. But technology and wisdom aren't the same thing." She activated a holographic display that showed comparative data from different species. Most galactic civilizations developed on worlds with stable climates and abundant resources. You never faced existential threats, so you never learned certain ... skills. "Skills like warfare," said Commander Scott Anderson. He was the leader of humanity's first colony on Proxima Centauri, and he spoke with the calm confidence of someone who had survived impossible odds. Skills like adaptation. Skills like refusing to quit when everything looks hopeless. The alien representatives shifted uncomfortably. The war had taught them hard lessons about human nature. Captain Jennifer Price, who commanded the exploration vessel Pioneer, had mapped 17 new trade routes during the conflict. Each route bypassed traditional Council space lanes, breaking their monopoly on interstellar commerce. "The economic implications alone are staggering," said the hegemony representative. "These new trade routes will change the balance of power throughout the galaxy." "That's the idea," said General Marcus Rivera. He was in charge of integrating former Council military units into the new Terran Alliance. His job was to teach alien soldiers how to fight alongside humans, which was proving more difficult than anyone had expected. Your soldiers don't understand our methods, Rivera continued. They're trained to fight clean, efficient battles with minimal casualties. We're trained to win, no matter what it costs. Kelthius leaned forward. General, your species frightens us, not because of your weapons or your ships, but because of your attitude toward death. You fight like you don't care if you live or die. We care, Rivera said, but we care more about protecting what we love than we do about our own safety. That's the difference between us and you. Admiral Wright pulled up a star chart showing the new territorial boundaries. The Galactic Council's space had shrunk by nearly 40%. Some worlds had declared independence. Others had joined the growing Terran Alliance. A few had been abandoned entirely when their populations fled to safer systems. The galaxy is changing, she said. The old order is breaking down. Species that were conquered centuries ago are remembering how to be free. And it's all because you picked a fight with the wrong planet. Captain Elena Vasquez entered the room carrying a datapad. She had been promoted to admiral after her brilliant defense of the asteroid belt. But she still preferred to deliver important reports personally. Ma'am, we're receiving surrender requests from 3 more council fleets. They want to join the Alliance. Why? Asked Kelthius. Because we treat our allies better than you treated your subjects, Vasquez replied. We don't demand tribute. We don't station occupation forces on their worlds. We just ask them to help us keep the peace. Dr. Brown activated another display showing refugee camps on human-controlled worlds. Millions of beings from Council space had fled to Terran Alliance territory during the war. We're taking care of everyone who comes to us for help, even former Council soldiers who fought against us. It makes no sense, said another alien representative. Why help your enemies? Because they're not our enemies anymore, said Commander Anderson. The war is over. Now we have to live with each other. Colonel Danny Murphy, who had led the famous boarding actions that captured dozens of Council ships, spoke from his position near the wall. Besides, we learned something important during this war. You're not naturally evil. You're just ... inexperienced. Inexperienced at what? At surviving, Murphy said simply. Your worlds were too easy. You never had to learn how to fight for it. Your lives, so you never learned how to value life properly. Admiral Wright stood and walked to the window. She could see Earth in the distance, a blue and white marble hanging in the black sky. You called our world a death world. You were right. It tried to kill us for millions of years. Ice ages, volcanoes, asteroids, plagues, wars. Everything that could possibly go wrong went wrong. She turned back to the aliens. But we survived it all. And surviving taught us something you never learned. What? It's that impossible things happen all the time. You just have to be stubborn enough to outlast them. Captain Tony Flores, who had become famous for his defense of Europa Station, laughed. From his chair at the back of the room, Ma'am, I think you're being too philosophical. The truth is simpler than that. Oh, we won because we wanted to win more than they wanted to conquer us. Everything else was just details. The room fell silent as the aliens considered this. Finally, Kelthius spoke. Admiral Wright, what do you want from us now? You've defeated our fleets, broken our empire, and shown the galaxy that you are the dominant military power. What are your terms? Karen Wright sat back down and looked at the treaty documents spread across the table. We want peace, real peace, not the kind you enforce with threats and fear. We want trade agreements that benefit everyone. We want to explore the galaxy together instead of fighting over it. And if we refuse, then you refuse. We're not going to force you to be our friends. But we're also not going to let you go back to conquering innocent worlds, Dr. Brown added. We've learned a lot about galactic history during this war. The Council has been bullying smaller species for centuries. That ends now, General Rivera nodded. We've got defense pacts with 47 worlds that used to be Council territories. If you attack any of them, you attack us. Kelthius looked around the table at the human faces staring back at him. They weren't cruel or vindictive. They were just absolutely certain of what they would and wouldn't allow. You realize, he said, slowly, that you're reshaping galactic civilization? Yes, Admiral Wright said. We are. The question is whether you want to help us do it right, or whether you want to fight us every step of the way. The Supreme Commander was quiet for a long moment. Then he picked up the stylus that would sign the treaty. "Admiral Wright, your species has taught us many things. Perhaps it's time we learned one more." "What's that?" "How to live in a galaxy where Deathworlders set the rules." He signed the treaty with a flourish. Around the table, other representatives followed suit. The old Galactic Order was officially dead. A new one, built on human principles of stubborn survival and protective cooperation, had taken its place. The universe would never be the same.